Hi guys, in this lesson I'm gonna talk about a 2-5-1 in the key of C and how you can get started improvising on that with arpeggios. One of the first things you need to work out when you start playing jazz is that you need to be able to play solo lines that follow the changes of the chords that are being played behind you. This is of course different than in other situations where you just have one scale for the entire part of the song that you're soloing on, and you really need to sort of follow the song and know where you are and exactly what notes are in the chord, and so on and so forth. In this lesson I'm going to take a 2-5-1 cadence, which is the most basic jazz cadence that you have, and then I'm going to give you the arpeggios for that, talk a little bit about how you practice them, and I'm going to try to demonstrate a way to work on this so that you can make some good, strong melodic lines using those arpeggio notes over that 2-5-1. So first, let's just look at what a 2-5-1 is. If I play a 2-5-1 in the key of C, that's D minor, G7, and C major 7. Of course, this is in the key of C, and all the things that I'm going to be doing in this lesson are going to be around this position, so the 8th position, and it's going to be around this scale, this C major scale. Even though we're not really using the scale directly, all the arpeggios that I'm going to show you, if you add them up, they're going to be in this position and in this scale. And it's also good to just have the overview of the scale fingering in the back of your head when you're doing this, because the first thing that happens right after you finish just playing solos with the arpeggios is that you want to solo with adding the diatonic notes that are found in the scale around the arpeggio. So let's first look at what this 2-5-1 really is. So because I'm calling it a 2-5-1 and it's named after the degrees of the scale. So we're in the key of C, so C is the 1 chord in this case, and the second note in a C major scale is a D, so the D minor 7 is the 2 chord, and if I go up to the 5th note in the scale I get a G, so the G7 is the 5, so that's the 2-5-1. So the easiest way to relate everything that you play to the chords is of course just to play the notes that are already found in the chord. That's the approach that we're going to work with. And if I play the arpeggio of a D minor 7 in this position, then I get this. And for G, and for C major 7, so everything is put pretty much in the same register, and I have covered all the strings with this, so it should be easy to make lines that sort of fit and move logically from one to the other. So when you start practicing the arpeggios, the first thing you need to do is of course to just really know the arpeggios, so you need to practice them. Just up and down and get used to them, to be able to play them without any difficulty. It can be really good to free up your movement within them by playing them in some sort of pattern, like, or something like this. There are lots of things that you can check out, and you don't really need to practice for speed. This is about getting free when you're playing them, so that you can use any sort of melody you can come up with and that you can easily play that. You want to be as free as possible within the arpeggio. That's the idea. And of course, if you do it open-ended and you try different sequences and different ideas within the arpeggio, then you're gonna have more options when you start making melodies with it, and you can play those ideas and put that together to be your lines. The next thing you need to do is that if you already know the different arpeggios, then maybe try and connect them in time over the progression. So our progression is of course 1 bar of D minor, 1 bar of G7 and 2 bars of C major. If I loop that and then try to follow, just start playing somewhere on the D minor and then just try to switch to the note that's the closest by when I get to the G7 after 4 beats. Then you get this exercise. So connecting the arpeggios like this is very useful because it forces you to keep track of where you are in the bar, and it's also going to help you to look ahead and to kind of see the arpeggio of the next chord already while you're playing on one chord, which is something that's very useful when you start making lines and when you're actually improvising. This is of course still sounding pretty much like an arpeggio, so like an exercise with arpeggios. And when you want to make music with this, the first thing you should probably do is to decide which notes you want to hit on each chord. So you're going to assign some target notes for each chord, and then try to make lines that move towards that. The reason why I want to do that is that if you're trained this way of thinking, then you're always ahead of what you're playing, and you're always trying to play towards something, and that's going to make your melodies a lot stronger and give them sort of a sense of purpose, a direction that they're moving. So to start off with, I would suggest you just aim for the third of each chord. So that would be this. For the D minor, that's the F. For the G7, it's a B. And for the C, it's an E. So when you start practicing, probably start rubato and then just try and see if you can make some lines going from D minor to G, for instance. So that would be something like take a higher B than this one. So just try and mess around with that, then try and take it through the whole progression. Just and in that way, always trying to make a line that is going to end on some note, and you're thinking ahead. You're deciding in advance which note you want to hit. That's the goal. That's what's going to make your melodies strong and make them sound logical. So let's look at some of the examples that I've written where I'm trying to do this. The first example sounds like this. So you can see there's not really anything special going on because you already know the notes are just the arpeggios. And what I'm using, well, I'm playing this sequence on the D minor. On the G7, when I get there, I'm first playing just the triad and then running down the arpeggio, and then this inversion of the C major 7 arpeggio. You'll notice that I'm not very often really just playing the arpeggio like, and I'm not going to do that in any of the examples because I don't really try to avoid it, but it happens when it happens, and essentially you don't want to be bound down to, tied down to only playing the arpeggio in one way. The second example sounds like this. So you could call this actually a shell voicing, and then I'm just playing a descending version of the arpeggio from the C to the C, and then of course going to my B, which is my target note, and here I'm actually just playing the arpeggio from the root after that, and going back, and this is actually encircling the third of the C major 7, so when I play the C major 7 I have this, and then I just descend down the arpeggio, so that would be. The third example sounds like this. So the first melody is actually just triad movement on the D minor. All the way up to the root. Then running down the minor 7 arpeggio. And then the G triad. 7th. And then from the 3rd down the arpeggio. And on the C major 7 I'm playing this pattern, which is, I later discovered, this drop 2 voicing in fact, but that's not so important. It's just a nice melody with some wide intervals on the C major 7. So that was a few examples of how I make lines using just the arpeggio notes over a 2-5-1 in C. In this video I'm working together with Quist from Quist Jam, and if you go to his website, which I will link to in the description of this video, you can sign up to his newsletter and then download a free backing track of a 2-5-1 in a slow tempo, so that you can practice these lines or making your own lines over that. I'll also make a separate video of how I improvise over that track with just the arpeggio notes, just to give you an idea about how far you can take it. This is something that, of course, it is fairly basic, but on the other hand it's also something that you end up returning to again and again, because it might be basic but you can still get some new things out of it, and you're really sort of going back to the core of the progression by just really digging into the main notes of the chord and making some melodies with it. And a lot of really good melodies, like a lot of standards for instance, are actually made with just these notes. So it's worthwhile to check out, and it's also something that I think if you ask people who are experienced players, that they return to once in a while, just to sort of get back to the core of a piece, or to the really basic structure of a progression. In any case, you can of course go to Quist's website and download a backing track and try it out on that. If you want a PDF of the examples, you can go to my website and there you can download that. You can also subscribe to my newsletter. If you have any comments or suggestions or questions about this lesson, then you can of course leave them here on the video. You can also connect with me on Instagram or Twitter or Google Plus or Facebook and let me know there. If you like this video, then you can like it here on YouTube, and you can also subscribe to my channel. That's one way to stay up to date with new lessons. I make a lesson pretty much every week. So yeah, thank you for watching, and until next week.